Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Just a quick reminder, if we reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I'm going to be giving away a BJJ Fanatics $50 gift card. And I don't have any affiliation with them or anything. I just think they have great value in what they offer. And just a little shout out to them. They have a 50% off coupon for Black Friday. With that out of the way, let's get into the video diving into ADCC and some lessons we can learn from there. The goal of this video is to learn what we can from the best in the world, and we're going to start off by talking about some really cool inside Sankaku entries, and then we're going to talk about heisting, and I've really been on a heisting hype lately. 3, we're going to talk about strategy, and I've never really been one to compete too much, but we're going to talk about strategy here. A lot of this came from me kind of like messing with the audio and listening to Gordon Ryan's coaching. So we're going to kind of listen to how Gordon Ryan is instructing the people that he's coaching, right? To kind of get an insight onto what they're trying to achieve. And 4, we're just going to give some honorable mentions, some really cool techniques that I didn't think necessarily fit into a broader topic, but I just wanted to draw attention to them. So just as a little heads up, while we're going through this video, it's just going to be a lot of screenshots, not a lot of actual video, because it's so new and I don't want to get copyrighted from Flow Grappling for putting actual footage. So just taking screenshots and then us talking over it. So let's get into the video. First, we're talking about inside Sankaku. And if you're subscribed, you've seen us talk about this specific thing multiple times in previous videos. But if you're in someone's butterfly half guard, you can't do a knee slice because that puts you right into inside Sankaku. So people are starting to figure it out, right? And you could see here, they're not doing a complete knee slice. They're leaving their toes hooked over Giancarlo's hamstring here. So when Giancarlo is trying to elevate, he scoops underneath the leg here, but his opponent is doing a really good job using their hand and keeping those toes hooked into the thigh there to prevent the inside Sankaku entry. So kind of a cool solution that Giancarlo did here is instead of hooking the thigh, he grabbed the calf, right, the ankle. So if we compare these two grips here, you'll see one is hooked around the thigh, like around the hamstring, and one is hooked around the ankle. And now when Giancarlo does the sweep, his opponent falls, right? And that makes it hard for them to keep their toes on the inside position, right? And that allows, once their toes slip out, then you can backstep successfully into inside Sankaku. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that classic half guard sweep where you grab their ankle or their knee and kind of knock them over their own leg. Kind of the same idea here to set up that backstep into inside Sankaku. Now, once we get to inside Sankaku, you'll hear Gordon Ryan shouting some advice to Giancarlo. So that audio is pretty clear. Yeah, sorry if it was a little louder or doesn't come through as smoothly as the other audio, but Gordon says, grab the long end of the lever and control the heel. And you'll see Giancarlo is grabbing up by the bend of the knee, so his opponent is able to curl his leg back towards their butt, right? And typically what people do, even though it might not necessarily be the most correct response, is that they can triangle their legs, right? If they're able to bring their foot back to their butt, they can triangle their legs. And you'll see his opponent tries to do that, but Giancarlo has a little trick up his sleeve as well. And he fills that space with his own foot. Now his opponent doesn't have the ability to triangle their legs. And I thought that was really, really clever. And Giancarlo ends up getting a heel hook finish, which I believe, based on Gordon's Instagram post, I believe it was his first heel hook finish in competition. So now here's a really cool entry into an inside heel hook by Placido. And you'll see he is currently in X guard with his hands on the ground, right? Not necessarily a good position to be in. He takes the hand that's closest to his opponent's butt and uses it to push that bottom hook out of the way as he backsteps. Now you'll see that top hook that was controlling the hip is now pretty much right in the holster of where Placido wants an inside heel hook. So all he has to do is sit behind that knee there. So he sits, captures the knee line, and falls right into an inside heel hook for the finish. Thought that was pretty slick, and it's probably there more often than we think. So now we're going to talk about heisting, and we just discussed this in our latest video, and we talked about how beneficial heisting is for creating that dilemma of upper body versus lower body attacks for your partner, right? If you're heisting and threatening the upper body and they defend that, they're going to give you their legs, and also vice versa. If they're defending their legs, they're going to give you the upper body, and we talked about that in our last video. In ADCC, Giancarlo was struggling a little bit in this match in his attacks on the upper body. He has this beautiful arm drag grip, but he's not able to do much with it, and you'll hear Gordon give him some coaching. So he says you can play a heisting game too. And not much new here, kind of exactly what we talked about previously, but I do think it's very underutilized, right? And probably a lot of us should be heisting a lot more than we currently do. So just keep that in mind, kind of validation from Gordon that we should be heisting more in our games. So now the scenario here is Giancarlo has the back of his opponent, but he doesn't have both hooks in yet. The way these ADCC rules work is for the first 3 minutes, there's no points, and then for the last 3 minutes, there is points. So there's 2 minutes and 44 seconds left. Giancarlo is trying to get both of his hooks in, and this is the coaching advice that Gordon gives. So you heard Gordon first say, threaten the neck, throw the hook, threaten the neck, throw the hook. So basically, kind of create that dilemma, right? Are you going to focus on your neck? You're going to focus on preventing me from getting this hook. And his opponent actually did a pretty good job of preventing both, right? Preventing the choke and also preventing the hook. So the next step Gordon coached Giancarlo to do is to heist up to a knee to bring him to the other side. And that allowed Giancarlo to not only get his second hook, but also to secure the finish and get the rear naked choke finish. So just another scenario where heisting is valuable, right? It's the same technique, just using a different scenario. And I thought it was just really interesting, and it's a big part of the game. It's a big term in the vocabulary of someone who is fluent in Danaher. So the big thing about heisting is that it raises the level of your base, right? It brings your head up, it brings your hips up. That's the value of heisting and the threat that it has on your opponent. So you'll hear Gordon and Danaher and that team talk about it from open guard as a way to present another challenge to your opponent, right? So if they're just worried about passing your guard, then it's going to be easier for them to pass their guard because that's all they're focused on. If they're worried about passing your guard and defending submissions, that makes it harder. If they're worried about passing your guard, defending submissions, and standing up, that makes it exponentially harder for them to pass your guard, right? So same idea from turtle position, and luckily enough for us, Placido found himself in turtle position a lot during ADCC, and Gordon gave him very consistent advice, and it had to do with building his base. So again, I don't know if that's necessarily heisting, but the idea is similar, right? You're raising the level of your base and you're presenting another threat to your opponent. If they're just worried about, oh, how do I get my hooks in and choke you, then it's going to be relatively easy for them to achieve that, as opposed to, oh man, I got to worry about holding this guy down. I got to worry about getting my hooks in, and I have to worry about choking him and the hand fight and things like that. It just adds another element. So if you're constantly posing the threat of standing up, that is valuable, right? It makes it more difficult for your opponent. And that's what Gordon Ryan consistently coached Placido to do. And we'll see here again in this scenario, Placido had a failed leg lock attempt, and Gordon kind of preps him and he says, "Be ready to heist from here." Because in order to win that scrimmage, you're going to need your head higher than theirs, you're going to need your hips higher than theirs to come out on top. And Placido almost gets his back taken. And you'll hear Gordon's coaching again tell Placido to 4-point, right? To raise the height of his hips and get out of the turtle position. Now we're going to talk about strategy, and I think it's a very big takeaway, especially if you're a coach or someone looking to compete. It's very valuable to be able to listen to Gordon coach his students to give them a sense of strategy and what they should be thinking about during the match. And I think it gives us a very valuable insight into the mindset of a world champion, right? So that's what we're going to talk about in this section. So in order to kind of understand the strategy, we already kind of talked about the rules, but just to reiterate, if there's under 3 minutes in the match, then points are awarded for a position, right? For a sweep, for a pass, for a back take, anything like that, you get points. Just as standard jiu-jitsu competition goes. So in this scenario here, Giancarlo has a leg entanglement, and you'll hear Gordon's coaching say, you can heist up on top. You can get the sweep if you want the points. And again, it's kind of a natural transition, but heisting is a very valuable tool in competition for points purposes as well.
Giancarlo, you can heist up the top position too.
That's exactly what Giancarlo did. He heisted up, and after he heisted up, he ends up going for arm and guillotine, but it's a little loose. And you'll hear Gordon say, "Be ready to scrimmage from here," meaning that there's going to be a scramble, right? And make sure you end up on the right side of that scramble because there are points. Now, his opponent scrambled up to a single leg, and you'll hear Gordon's coaching again. You can't pull. You can't pull. If you were to pull in this scenario, you're giving your opponent the takedown. So you can't pull. And that is, I think, a very valuable thing coaches can take away instead of shouting technique advice all the time. You'll hear Gordon constantly giving strategic advice throughout the match. And that, I think, is really valuable to his competitors. Now, kind of on the flip side of that coin, in this scenario, there's 3 minutes and 17 seconds left. So there are no points. And they're kind of resetting in the middle. And as they're resetting, you'll hear Gordon say, so basically Gordon saying, hey, points are about to start, right? So think about where you want to be. Do you want to be where you just reset and trying to pass his guard when points are starting? And I'll let you see how this kind of plays out.
5 seconds to point. 1 second.
So basically, his opponent went to stand, and because there was still time left where there are no points, Giancarlo elected, instead of the last scenario where he wasn't allowed to pull, right? He wasn't allowed to sit to guard because it was under 3 minutes in the match. But because there's still over 3 minutes, he elected to sit to guard with a nice 2-on-1 grip. Like I said, Gordon wasn't necessarily telling him what to do. He's just relaying information to his athlete so they can make the best strategic decision that they can make, that they feel comfortable with, right? All right, let's get into these honorable mentions. And this video is already pretty long, so I'm going to try and speed through these here. First is this Darce defense. And Placido was stuck in this pretty deep Darce, and this is the advice Gordon gave. So I think this goes back to what we talked about in a previous video here, where we talked about when defending the back, you need to make sure that before you start like messing with the legs or anything, that you have that primary attacking arm monitored, right? That you're protecting your neck and you're gonna survive, right? Before you start trying to clear your feet or do anything else, you need to make sure that you're not gonna get choked, right? So same idea, he constantly reiterated, keep that inside thumb. And it looks to be the arm that's being caught in the choke. That is the arm that the thumb is inside the choke. So get that thumb inside, keep that thumb inside position, and then start to work on freeing your hips, freeing your leg. But the most important thing is to keep that inside thumb position and make sure you don't die. So now this next scenario is guard passing, right? And apologize, the audio on this one isn't as clear, but you could see Giancarlo's knee has passed the guard, but Giancarlo doesn't have very good upper body control at this point, right? His opponent is on his side, and Giancarlo is kind of struggling to achieve secure upper body positioning. So it's not very clear, but you'll hear Gordon say left knee to half. And that is basically telling Giancarlo to drop that left knee back into half guard, to take a step backwards and put himself into half guard. And I'll play that audio for you now. He drops himself into half guard. Now I'll play this too. Gordon says, good. So he drops his knee into half guard. Looks like on the surface that he's going backwards, right? His knee was past the half guard. Now he's dropping himself back into half guard. But what this allows is for Giancarlo now to work on getting better upper body positioning before he starts to pass. So you'll see here as we compare the two scenarios where his knee is just dropping into half guard here on the left, you could see his opponent is well on his side and has a good upper body positioning, right? But on the right, as Giancarlo's knee's been in half guard for a little bit, he's been able to flatten his opponent out. So now when he does pass, he'll be in a much more secure position, right? So just the idea of not being afraid to go backwards a little bit to secure better positioning for when you pass. Now the last honorable mention, just want to thank you guys if you made it this far in the video. We're working on a 20-minute video here, so if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. But the last honorable mention we're going to talk about is an arm-in guillotine. And you can see Placido here. He shoots this guillotine super deep and is able to get the high-risk position where basically you can see his fingertips come out above the shoulder of his opponent. So he gets a really deep wrap around the neck. And to finish this, instead of, grabbing his own hand like most people do in arm-in guillotines or grabbing your own wrist in an arm-in guillotine, Placido grabs his elbow. And I don't think I've ever seen this grip before. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then I went back and I found a scenario where Giancarlo had pretty much the same thing. And it looks like he has the same grip here. Giancarlo on the left, you can see he's got that high risk position with the guillotine. And that second arm is going in underneath the armpit of his opponent. And I imagine it's reaching for Giancarlo's own elbow there. So just a new grip to kind of keep in mind when you're finishing an arm-in guillotine. Maybe mess around with it, see what you think, see if it's tight. I imagine it's going to work very well for you because Placido got that tap very, very quickly in ADCC when he used this arm-in guillotine variation. So again, if you made it this far in the video, appreciate the support. Yeah, this probably the longest breakdown we've done so far. So hopefully you guys find value in that. Hopefully we reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I want to give back to you guys, and I'm excited to reach that milestone with you all. So appreciate the support, and we'll see you next time.